Hello and welcome back to another video of Minecraft and Reddit stories. Today in my world, I don't know exactly what I'll be doing, but you'll see for yourself. Without further ado, here goes the stories. Okay, the first story goes like this. The Never Mile. I grew up in a small town where you could drive the same road every day and swear it would never end. We called it the Never Mile. No one ever agreed where it began or ended. On the country maps, it's just a faded gray line, a perfect ruler stroke in the middle of nowhere. When I was a kid, my dad told me to never follow it at night. He said it doesn't like being looked at after dark. Not people, not drivers, it. Last week, I had to deliver some totes to a man outside of town. Local delivery work, easy money. I picked them up from a rough-looking guy at a gas station around 11. After that, I planned to head home, crack a beer, and game for the rest of the day. The job paid $3,000, so I stocked up on beer and snacks, enough to hold up for days. The address was 7 miles away, 30 minutes according to Waze. I saw the green route line stretch right over the Never Mile's faded gray, and my dad's warning flashed in my head, but it was still before noon. I'd be home by 1. I turned onto the Never Mile with music blasting, pavement, trees, a distant farmhouse, a billboard, fresh, double yellow lines, no sidewalk, just a dirt path on the shoulder. The sun straight in my eyes. Right as I nailed the chorus to feeling this, fate fell short this time. Your smile fades in the summer. The music cut out. My phone still showed it was playing, but there was no sound. The tires hummed louder. The air felt heavier, like a storm was coming, though the forecast was clear. I think I knew then. The pavement looked new, but it had no smell. The farmhouse never got closer. The same billboard rolled past again and again. I'd been driving 10 minutes. It was a cracked, faded ad for a diner that closed decades ago. I knew because the owner died when I was in middle school. I checked the rear view. The same billboard was behind me. Same missing corner, same graffiti over tasty cream pies, same trees beyond it, both ahead and behind me. The car smelled like wet earth, freshly dug. I kept going, 20 miles, 30, the sun didn't move. I saw a barefoot man walking the opposite way, head down. 10 minutes later, I saw him again, same pace, same clothes, only this time he passed me. I never slowed. His lips were moving, but I couldn't hear the words. By mile 50, I stopped checking Waze. It still said I was 1 mile away. I turned around. In the distance, another car turned too, facing me in the opposite lane, maybe 30 feet ahead. The driver was me. Same clothes, same hat, same scab from shaving that morning. I didn't feel my foot press the gas, but the car moved forward. So did he. His eyes stayed on the road, his lips moving like the barefoot man's. I rolled my window down as we passed each other. He was saying my name, our name, over and over. I hit the brakes. The rearview mirror showed nothing but empty road. The smell of wet earth filled my lungs. Ahead, the road shimmered, not heat, more like a film reel stuttering. I stepped out. The asphalt was soft, cold. I took off my shoes and started walking the other way. So am I dumb, but what is totes? I don't know what that means. If you know, let me know down in the comments. But anyways, I'll be moving on to the next story. Okay, here's the next story. I work as a DoorDash driver, and I think my last delivery was alive. It was supposed to be an easy part-time delivery job. I would make a few extra bucks, help pay my rent, pay down some credit card debt, but for a job delivering food, things went from mundane to dangerous remarkably fast. I worked very early morning hours in a warehouse and would get off work fairly early in the day. I had not planned on getting a second job at all. The pay was decent, but when my roommate left me high and dry to move in with his girlfriend without notice, I was left in a financial lurch. That was when I decided to look for an easy part-time delivery job to get into. It wound up being DoorDash or Uber, and I figured I'd rather deliver food than people, so I signed up. When I started, the pay was not great. I suppose when you decide your own hours, it can get messy. I thought it wouldn't work around my other job schedule, so it was the best I could do. Honestly, if that was the only problem, it would have been fine, but the customers, now that is where it gets disturbing. I know a lot of delivery drivers deal with weird folks, but when food is involved, it makes most people even more intolerable. Most customers are fine, but the people I have been working with for the last few weeks, well, let's just say if I make the wrong move now, things might get bad, very bad, now that I know what I know. I've been at this for a month now, and the first 2 weeks delivering had been uneventful, draining and tedious, but uneventful. I live in a fairly small town, so there was not a lot of deliveries available on the average night. Though with how small it was, I was surprised how many people would still use the app for delivery. I was lucky in that sense, and it seemed like barely any other people were delivering here. With no competition, I got a decent number of deliveries at first, though most of the people were on the older side and lousy tippers, regardless of how the service was. I was still struggling and starting to get disheartened. I thought I might need a different job to help cover the gap in paying my rent until I could get a new roommate. Then I accepted a delivery that changed it all. It was the delivery to a small retirement home near the outskirts of town. I was not expecting much since many of the older clients were stingy and demanding, so I went to retrieve the order. Most of the deliveries I made were from the few restaurants we had in town, as well as some fast food places that were close. This delivery was from a curious little Greek place that had just opened up a month earlier. It was called Phagos and served some classic Greek food with a twist. From the ratings I had seen, it was pretty popular so far. I figured I was going to be getting a lot more orders from this place. I arrived as soon as I could to the small restaurant. It was a fairly dingy building. Not much polish had been put into the grand opening, and I was surprised by the state it was in. I walked past the sign and saw a name in Greek on the sign in smaller font. I can't read that. Then in larger font, the name of the restaurant, Phagos. I stepped inside and heard the ringing of a small bell. I waited for someone to come to the counter and looked around a bit. The dining area was very small and no customers were currently there. Inside the place did look nice and tidy. The decor was not bad either and the vibe seemed right for the type of restaurant it seemed like. I saw that they even had a lot of classical paintings on the wall and I admired the effort put into making it look good. Though the Goya of Saturn or Kronos in Greek eating his children on the wall was a bit off-putting, especially considering it was right by what looked like the kitchen. For having just opened, I was surprised it was not as busy inside, but I guess if people were grabbing to-go orders, it was more work for me, so I wouldn't complain. As I looked around, the pervasive smell struck me. I like Greek food, but nothing in there smelled like that. It had a sickly sweet aroma. It was just odd enough where I could not decide if it smelled appealing or disgusting, and the few other scents I noted I could not quite describe at all. My musings were cut short when a small woman emerged from the kitchen and locked eyes on me. She looked ancient and weathered, but the gleam in her eyes possessed an energy that bellied her age. She was scrutinizing me as I approached, and I suddenly felt a disturbing sensation. Before the awkward silence lingered any longer, she suddenly smiled and greeted me. "Are you the driver?" I nodded my head and she looked thrilled. Yes, good. My name is Andropos, but my friends just call me Annie. Welcome, I am so glad you'll be working with us. Please let me go get you something for the trouble before you head out. She was already moving past me to grab some items from the counter and I tried to tell her not to worry and I had to go, but she would not hear it. In a few minutes she had made me a tasty little flatbread snack and was crooning over me like a protective mother figure. "Thank you so much, ma'am, but I do need to head out with that delivery." She nodded her head and smiled and placed her hand to her head. "Oh yes, of course, I am sorry, I just love to serve people. It should be ready now. You wait here and I will go get it." I sat on the small bench by the front door to wait. In another moment she was back, holding a large box that almost tottered out of her grip. I rushed over to help her and she thanked me again. "Now this is a special delivery, a special order for you to take to our friends at the retirement home. Talk to Demos, he will take the delivery. Only give the box to Demos. Do not leave it there unless he is there to take it." She handed me the large box, and when I hefted it, I was amazed that she could carry it. It felt like it weighed almost 100 pounds. She was beaming at me and followed me to the door to open it. I thanked her and tried to return the smile, though the strain of handling the box. I nodded my head and left back outside to get to my truck. She seemed very nice, but something about the entire place seemed a bit off. I had never delivered such a giant order of food before, and it was strange it was in a crate that looked more in common with the freight I moved in my day job than it did a food delivery. The smell was strange too, not bad, but it was the same sweet smell from before. It felt like it was just enough to make it less appealing, like it had too much of one ingredient to cover something else up. I suppose it did not matter, and I went on my way to make the delivery. My destination was the Pickham's Green retirement home. It was nice from what I had seen of the outside, but I had never been in personally. I was already dreading the more onerous customers who would be upset by some problem with the food and just give next to nothing for a tip. But I moved on, and in about 10 minutes I was there. I arrived in good time and rang the bell at the reception desk. I waited for a response, but nothing came. I was about to leave the food there, but I remembered my instructions and waited. Eventually, a nurse emerged from an office in the back. She moved towards me and I saw her name was Nancy. She was very pretty and I smiled at her when she regarded me. "Good evening, visiting hours are over now, but is there something else I can help you with?" I returned the greeting and gestured to the box I had set down nearby. Yes, please, I am looking for Demos. I am supposed to drop this food off for him and hopefully however many folks he is going to share with. I chuckled at the notion of one person getting the giant crate of food, but instead of relaxing, the woman stared at me for a moment with a nervous look in her eyes. Demos, yes, one moment I will get him. I waited around until an older man emerged from the back. He looked angry and stared at me for a moment before regarding the nurse. This is him? You said he was asking for me? The young nurse nodded and looked concerned. The situation felt weirdly tense for a simple delivery, and I was not sure what to say. He looked back at me, then the crate, and scowled. I just decided to declare myself. Yes, I have your DoorDash delivery. Annie at Fagus said to give it directly to you and not just to leave it. I watched his reaction and he looked weirdly mistrustful. Eventually he just nodded his head and brushed past me. To my surprise, he effortlessly hefted the box up and left. He had not acknowledged me at all. I called out to him, "What about?" The nurse stepped in front of me and had a very fake smile plastered on her face. "Here's your tip, thank you again." I took the small envelope she had handed me and I was about to ask if they needed anything else before she told me to leave since they would be locking it for the night. I thought it was odd, but I did not want to stay there any longer than I had to anyway. I left the building and went back to my car. As I sat down, I figured I would see how they managed to shortchange me. They had selected the cash tip option and I had a feeling that in this case somehow it would screw me over. That Demos guy looked like a real bastard and I figured it might not be cash at all but an angry note. It turned out I was wrong. Not only was it cash, but the envelope held $800. I had to do a double take and recount it, but it was the same amount again. I had no idea why the hell they had given me so much money, though I did see a small piece of paper mixed in with a stack of $100 bills. I unfolded it and was confused by what it said. "Take this and do not come back. Do not take any more delivery jobs here for your sake." I thought it was so strange. Someone was warning me not to do any more deliveries for them by giving me a bunch of cash as a tip. If anything, it was even more incentive to do so, but I did wonder why someone put it in there. I was foolish enough to believe at the time that it was because someone else might want to be saving those deliveries to get the huge tips for themselves. I wish that had been why. Against the advice of the odd warning, I did respond to the next delivery for Pickman's Green that I saw. It was another order from Fagus, and when I arrived, Annie was there again and greeted me like a long-lost child. She was a little too friendly and pinched my cheeks, saying I was not eating enough and that I was all skin and bones, and that she needed to fatten me up. As cute as the dotting grandmother act was, I was mostly there for the huge payday from those jobs. Each time I had made a delivery to the retirement home, I made a cash tip of around $800. For that I would deal with a little embarrassment from the restaurant owner. That night when I made my deliveries, there were 2 boxes and I needed to take them in one at a time. I waited by the reception desk to be let in, but instead of the younger, pretty nurse Nancy, there was a young man I hadn't seen before. He had deep bags under his eyes and looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He saw me struggling with the boxes and did not move to help, just stood there and said, "Delivery?" I nodded my head and grunted, struggling with another large crate that felt like it had a whole cow inside. After the boxes were inside, the young man moved to take them, but I stepped in. "Actually, I am only supposed to leave that with Demos. Could you go get him?" The man glared at me, and I shrunk back involuntarily, as if I had offended him by asking. I reiterated, "My instructions are to only leave the delivery with Demos. I'm sorry." The man glowered at me for another moment and flatly stated he is not here right now. I was not sure how to respond. I did not know why they would not have told me. I wondered if I should just leave the food with this nurse instead, but the way he was acting felt off. I was about to agree when the door opened and Demos walked in. When the nurse saw him, they broke into an argument in a language I did not recognize. The tone sounded off though, like it was too guttural. It did not sound like Greek or any other dialect I could place. Whatever they were talking about, it sounded like an argument that I had no idea what they were saying. I was getting uncomfortable, waiting for them to stop fighting so I can get my tip, but then Demos struck the other man after he gestured at me and drew a finger across his throat. I did not like the situation. I ran, leaving the box with them and just trying to get the hell out of there. I was not sure what set them off, but I felt like I was a moment away from being attacked. I decided to ignore the orders for the retirement home for a while. I had saved a good deal of money and it would get me by for a little bit. It was just last night that I was convinced to come back and make my most recent delivery. I had received a direct phone call from Annie at Fagus. I was not sure how she had gotten my number, but she was asking me to make a big delivery for a catering event at Pickman's Green. She said she would pay me 2,000 plus tips if I would go. Despite what happened last time I delivered for them, I couldn't turn down the crazy payday, so I agreed to go. I arrived early at the restaurant and stepped inside. The place felt oddly cold, like no one had been cooking for a while. I shouted into the back, announcing myself. Hello? But no one answered. I looked around and saw the light seemed oddly dim as well. It seemed like they had closed early for something. Eventually, Annie emerged from the back room. She smiled as she saw me, but the dim light and the bags under her eyes gave her face an unfortunately hideous quality that I wouldn't dare mention to her directly. I shrunk back a bit involuntarily, despite her ghoulish countenance. She seemed elated that I was there. Oh my, there you are. Come in, come in. We have the delivery already. We are so grateful you are helping us serve all of those people there. She ushered me toward the kitchen, and when I stepped in, I was shocked to see the gigantic crate that was waiting for me. I looked at her and had to protest. I'm sorry, I don't even think I could lift this without a forklift, ma'am. This looks like a month worth of food. How are they going to use so much? And why is it in this type of industrial crate? She brushed off my words and was unconcerned. Oh, don't worry about that. It may be heavy, but my sons will help you carry it out, and Demos can help you when you get there. It is not just one meal, but a large portion of our fresh specialty. It needs to be kept safe. It is our restaurant's entire body of work. She smiled again, but I was unsure. I noticed that two teenage boys had entered the room at some point. Annie spoke to them in a language I couldn't recognize. I was fairly sure it was not Greek either. It unnerved me since it sounded more like the men arguing at Pickman's Green that night. The two boys turned to me and then stood on one side of the giant crate, and I got the hint. Annie bid us goodbye and good luck and said she had another one to get started on. I hefted the other side of the crate and it was incredibly heavy, at least 200 pounds. We managed to make it to my truck, huffing and puffing, and I had to strap it down and secure it before I could get going. The two boys watched me wordlessly as I worked, not offering to help but not interfering. The silent treatment was awkward and I considered trying to make small talk, but I decided against it and just left, giving them a small wave. As I drove to Pinkman's Green, I considered how strange this delivery was. This was not even on record with the app or company. She had called me directly, and now I was hauling this fright-sized box of food to the already suspicious folks at that shady retirement home. As I was considering the situation, I heard a loud banging noise from the back of my truck. I panicked at first and thought I might have hit something, then I realized I may have not tied it down correctly, and the box might have shifted or gotten banged up or something. I looked back and did not see it shifting, but I wanted to make sure before continuing in case it did get loose and fall out. I turned off the engine and stepped out. Almost in unison with my door closing, I heard another thump coming from the back. It made me jump, and this time I knew it had been from the box. But to my concern, it was not shifting. I was not even moving anymore. How could it be making noise? I inched closer, suddenly concerned by the silence all around me on the almost deserted highway at dusk. I waited for another few minutes, anxiously expecting something to happen, and it was quiet. A car drove past me, breaking the abusive stillness of the situation, but no noises from the box. Eventually, I decided it was my imagination, and I got back in the truck and continued on my way. I arrived at Pinkman's Green, and as I stepped out, I thought I heard another sound, like a hard exhalation of breath from someone. I looked around and saw I was still alone, but the situation was disturbing me. I rushed inside to hopefully find Demos and get this over with. Inside, I saw he was waiting near reception where the nurses would normally be. The permanent scowl still itched on his face. As soon as I walked in, he left the desk and just brushed past me, bumping into my shoulder and just walking past me. I thought I even heard him mutter something under his breath. I walked with him as we went to my truck. He stopped and turned around and demanded, "Open the back and let's get this over with." I did as he instructed, not wanting to spend any more time with him than I had to. As I was undoing the straps, I caught him subtly taking a picture of my license plate with his phone. Before I could say anything, he turned to me and asked, How is it coming? I decided to just answer him instead of asking about his weird behavior. "It's all set. Let's get it inside. Do you have a dolly or something?" He frowned at me and pointed to the building. "It's barely a short walk. Come on, use your back." His smile was worse than his frown, and he showed me a toothy grin with hideously brown, almost needle-like teeth. I just nodded my head and bent down to get ready to lift. We raised the giant crate out of the flatbed and started moving. I was trying to back up with it, but the angle was off, and when we tried to turn and I told him I needed to set it down, he ignored me, saying we were almost there, and he kept going. My fingers started slipping, and I told him I needed to put it down again until eventually it slipped and the box crashed down to the ground on my side. Demo shouted what was likely a curse in whatever his native language was and bent down to inspect the box. My face was red and I was embarrassed despite the fact he had not been listening to me. Before I had time to concern myself with his rebuke, my heart froze when I heard a distant knocking sound, and it was coming from inside the box. The knocking sounded again, and I thought I heard a muffled cry. I froze looking at the box and hearing the sound, then looking at Demos, as if to confirm he heard it too. Then the angry look on his face vanished, and he flashed a horrid grin and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. On second thought, I will take it from here and get Seth to help me bring this the rest of the way in. He whistled loudly, and the young man from before showed up, running to meet us. He turned back to me. Don't trouble yourself with this or any other burdens you might have. It's not your problem anymore. You take this and buy yourself something nice, alright my friend? Drive safe and give my regards to Anthrop and her restaurant. He continued grinning at me as he pressed the envelope into my hand and turned back to the box. Both men hefted the giant crate, as they lifted it, I heard the banging sound increase in volume and tempo. The last thing I heard as they carried it inside was something that sounded like the word help. I left in a horrified daze. I was not sure if I should call the police or just go home and hide. I know what I heard. I did not see anything, but I am not crazy. Something was in there, or worse, someone. The more I thought about it, the worse the situation felt. I did not know if it was some weird human trafficking business I had gotten roped into, but I couldn't figure out why they had me delivering those smaller boxes first. I thought about Annie and how she seemed so nice, but it's so insistent I work with for her. I was afraid she knew more about me than I thought. She had found my number, and worse, maybe she knew where I lived. Honestly, I do not know if I should be telling anyone about this for now, for that matter, but when more of the pieces came together, the real danger has become clear, and I fear something terrible might happen, something I have to warn people about. The final revelation came to me when I started to question the true nature of the mysterious restaurant and their client at Pickman's Green. I stumbled upon it while researching a bit about Annie and the restaurant. I found out very little about her or her history directly, though it was in piecing together her name and the restaurant on a notepad where I realized the horror had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. I knew she had introduced herself as Anthrop, or Annie for short, then I considered her restaurant's name Fagus. I put the two together on my note, and the morbid implications were too much to bear. Annie's restaurant, Anthropos restaurant, Annie's Fagus, Anthropos Fagus, Anthropophagus. The word sounded familiar. I looked at the definition. I think I know what was really in that box now, and I'm never making a delivery there again. I basically did what the op did as well. I looked up what anthropophagus means. For any of you who don't know, it basically just means man-eater or cannibal. Okay, and here's another story. I slept with my best friend, and I can't stop thinking about it. This feels so weird to type out, but last week I hooked up with my best friend. It wasn't something we planned or even talked about beforehand. We were both having crap days and ended up hanging out at his place like we always do. Usually we just vent, maybe play some games, order takeout, scroll through TikTok or memes, and laugh at dumb stuff. But this time it was different. We were sitting close, talking quietly, and all of a sudden we were kissing. At first I thought I could maybe just stop there, but then one thing led to another, and before I even processed it, clothes were on the floor and he was inside me. It wasn't drawn out or movie-like, it was fast, messy, and so intense it caught me off guard. Honestly, it felt incredible. When it was over, he stayed close, resting his hand on me like he didn't want to let go. I swear I heard him whisper something like, "I love you," but neither of us brought it up. After a while, we just lay there, scrolling through social media side by side, acting like nothing unusual had happened. I told him later we shouldn't do it again because I don't want to risk ruining what we have. But the truth is, I can't stop thinking about him. I've realized I've been in love with him for a while. I just never admitted it until now. Part of me wonders if he's sitting there replaying the night in his head too, and if he is, how long before one of us gives in again. As an outsider, to me, it sounds like they both kind of have feelings for one another, but it's up to them if they decide to take their relationship to the next level or not. Either way, I think they'd still be fine with one another. Anyways, moving on to the next story. Here's the next story. I gave up background music for a week and realized how addicted I am to noise. The silence was so uncomfortable that I started making up songs in my head just to fill the void. Apparently, I can't handle being alone with my thoughts. I decided to try going a full week without any background music. That means no Spotify while working, no podcasts while cooking, no playlist while just existing at home. I thought it would be peaceful and help me focus. Instead, I discovered I'm basically a noise addict. The first day I kept reaching for my headphones out of habit. By day 3, I was genuinely anxious about the silence and started humming just to hear something. The weirdest part was realizing how much I use background music to regulate my emotions. I also noticed how loud my own thoughts are when there's nothing drowning them out. In actual silence, my brain was like a room full of people all talking at once. To me, this perfectly encapsulates what the saying silence speaks louder than words means. Anyways, moving on to the next story. Okay, here's the next story. I've been hooking up with my best friend's grandmother. I'm going to keep this vague and brief to be anonymous. I've been friends with this guy for a while. He moved away and asked that I spend time with his grandmother so that she doesn't get lonely. He's like a brother to me, so I agree. She recognized me from some events that he had in his life that I was a part of, so we already had a rapport. For reference, she's in her 60s and I'm in my 20s/30s. I sat with her and did some crafts together, like normal shit you would do with your grandmother. She asked that I make her a drink, and when I brought it back, she told me that she didn't enjoy drinking alone. I took the hint and made myself a drink. Fast forward 2 hours, and between the two of us, we probably knocked back around 6 mint juleps, so I'm pretty tipsy. Eventually, the topic got onto my dating endeavors. She told me that I had needed to find a girlfriend before I end up like her, old and alone. I reassured her that she was pretty and didn't look a day over 40. Again, shit that you would say to an older lady. She asked if I could believe that she hadn't gotten off since her late husband passed. To be honest, that caught me off guard, but from how sexual the conversation had gotten, and from the idea that someone can go over a decade with finishing, she asked if would help her out. I won't lie, she's a beautiful woman, and the booze broke down my inhibition. I said screw it and said yes, and we hooked up. Since then, we've been hooking up semi-regularly. Of course, I feel guilty as hell due to her being my friend's grandmother. On the other hand, we both are single and adults. I needed to get this off of my chest because it's been eating me up inside. What the fuck? This is a crazy ass story. I thought I would never hear this in my life. This is like one of those stories where you hear where you for sure think it's fake, but if this is real, that's a 1 in a million type of story. There's no way. Like, that's crazy. Anyways, moving on to the next story. Okay, the next story goes like this. I was a night auditor for years and I never did my job. I loved working at hotels in my youth because I had absolute authority when I was alone, and I used it to study my graduate degree when I worked 40 hours a week and studied full time. My job was always almost done by the time I got there. I'd speak to maybe 3 people all night, and because I'd get along with people, they'd constantly shout me out. When anyone called, we were magically sold out. My predecessor accidentally gave away thousands of dollars of snacks and drinks in a scam, so I padded my pathetic food budget with free monsters, chips, anything that could get me a free meal. And us hotel workers are treated well, free food, good perks. I did this from 25 to 30. I really recommend it if you want a job that has pretty much no oversight. I sure do know how to run auditing, updating though. Here's the next story. I've never told anyone about what I saw late at night walking home. When I was 17, I was walking home around 2 a.m. from a friend's place. My neighborhood is quiet, no cars, no people, just streetlights and the sound of sprinklers. Halfway down the block, I hear footsteps behind me, slow, steady, matching my pace. I turn around, nothing. Streets empty, I keep walking, footsteps start again, but closer this time. I freeze and they stop too. Out of the corner of my eye, I see something crouched behind a parked car. Pale, almost too pale, long arms pressed to the ground like it wasn't standing upright. I blink and it's gone. No sound, no movement. I sprinted the rest of the way home. My parents thought I was just being paranoid, but I swear on my life I wasn't. Even now, years later, if I'm walking alone at night and the street goes quiet, my stomach drops and I remember that thing. I don't know if it was a person, an animal, or something else, but I know it was watching me. It's gotta be a skinwalker story. There's no way this isn't anything else but that. Anyways, moving on to the next story. And for the last and final story. Today I fucked up by repeatedly poisoning myself with cyanide. Obligatory, not today, but something I've just realized I did when I was younger. When I was younger, maybe 8 to 12, black cherries were my absolute favorite fruit. Oh god. My mom would bring home a bag or two and I'd happily eat all of them in one sitting. But every single time not long after, I'd get wrecked. Horrible stomach pain, nausea, pounding, headaches. When I gained the slightest bit of intelligence, I put 2 and 2 together and realized I must be allergic. So I eventually stopped eating my favorite fruit. Fast forward to recently, I found out cherry pits contain cyanide, and when I was a kid, I didn't just eat the cherries, I chewed and swallowed every single pit, whole bags of them. For years, my mom swears she warned me not to eat the pits, but I don't remember it at all and obviously didn't listen. So yeah, it turns out I wasn't allergic, I was just repeatedly giving myself cyanide poisoning. I was not a smart child. TLDR, as a child, didn't realize cherry pits contained cyanide and would repeatedly eat multiple bags of cherries plus pits, resulting in repeated mild cyanide poisoning. This honestly reminds me of those videos where it's like, it tells you like a fruit or something and it tells you how much like if you eat 10,000 bananas, you can die of radiation or something like that. This is what this reminds me of. This story right here. Anyways, enough of the rambling. That was all the stories I had for today, and I hope you've enjoyed them.